Here we go. Griffin Wild Black. We're taking a little bit of break, and I'm here with Dr. Helm. How you doing?
Hey, KP, how are you? We had 2 weeks off.
I think we kind of needed the time off. It was serendipitous, but we needed it. We had a holiday last week with Thanksgiving, and we talked about this last time. But holidays can be really great, or they can be really painstaking. So hopefully, folks had time to do their thing. Hopefully, you enjoyed your Thanksgiving. You got some food in you.
I did, and then a snowstorm came to the Midwest right after that, so a pretty bad one too. Hot ass
See,
mess.
yeah, and we talked about this before we got on, but I'm over here snuggled up like it's so cold.
Yeah,
But it's only 42 here. It's what in Chicago?
it's a low today of 4 degrees, and we usually have this weather, but we usually get it, like, towards the end of January, February, but it's early December, and it's here. We're supposed to have a terrible winter, and I do not like the cold. I do not like it, despite b a lifelong Chicagoan, I don't care for it. Look, even the dog is cold. You see him back there in the corner? He's even like, "Whoa." He does not like the cold either. He's cold.
Well, again, I can't complain because I think next week we're going to be back in the 70s. So,
Yeah, I don't wanna hear that. Moving on. Moving on.
well, we have a hot list of topics to discuss. I think
We
things
do.
will be informative, but also some things will be maybe a little lighthearted. We definitely have our sexual health topic, which is a topic of STIs, STDs, sexually transmitted diseases, or infections. Then I think it's really important. I'm glad we keep on having the intention of talking about this, but we're going to talk about today about Black women in childbirth and some of the challenges we're experiencing right now. Then some of the things that come out recently in the news about what's considered a profession versus what's not a profession, according to our federal government. We'll get
Lots
into
of side
that.
eye. Lots of side
Yeah,
eye.
we got side eye for that. And then
Yeah.
we got Pharrell, who's he's made some comments recently at a Black event of all things about success and those kind of things.
I'm about
And
to
then the,
side
the
eye him
official
too.
the official side eye is for Trump and Marjorie MTG, Marjorie
Mhm.
Taylor Greene, and some of the things that have gone on politically, but
Yes.
also just the racist nonsense that Trump just seems to be putting out there into the universe on a regular basis while he's
Yeah.
eating his Cheetos.
Yeah.
So before we get started, I want
Let's
to
get
start
to
off
it.
with our Djembe card, and let's do this one. Feelings I'm navigating about diversity, equity, inclusion are blank, blank, and blank.
How come it gotta be a blank, blank, and blank? It just can't be a blank? Now I gotta write down blank, blank, and blank to make sure I answer each of the blank. Um, let's see. Feelings about navigating diversity, equity, inclusion are frustrating, a little sad because we're not having conversations that we need to be having, and worrying. I'm worried that history is being erased, that conversations aren't being had, and we're taking huge steps backwards into making more inclusive spaces.
Yeah. I'll be honest, a lot of those are similar kinds of feelings I'm having. I'll be honest, there's some good old fashioned uh, frustration that also looks like anger because sometimes I just get all pissed off and enraged about some of the nonsense. You just like, come on, really?
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's been going on for such a long time. There is deep sadness I experience around it because I think it's the kind of harm that's going around
Mhm.
is really disheartening. I do want to mention there are moments of joy because I've been going to some events. It's the season of banquets and events and stuff. And I've been seeing Black and brown and women and other people of all different shapes and sizes coming together to celebrate what I've determined to be a really difficult year. But to really find places for celebration, to get back together and remind ourselves of how important each of us are to one another. And so that's actually been really great as well. So it's been challenging, but there's been some rewarding experiences as well. So I'll say that. So which one do you want to get into first? We want to do STIs. We want to talk Black women in childbirth.
Really want to get involved with the conversation about Black women in childbirth because
Yes.
this has been known in the literature to be a thing, right? That Black women, and I don't have the statistics on hand, but are far more likely than white women and any other racial ethnic group in our country to die in childbirth, right? And it's due to several reasons. One is due to, health disparities, right? It's due to even this old stereotype that Black people don't feel as much pain that was perpetuated during slavery, to make white slave owners feel better about, beating the hell out of slaves till, and try not to kill folks' property. And it persists to this day. Guilty pleasure for me is TikTok. And on TikTok, there are two examples of videos, right? And it's really interesting to me how video culture has reopened conversations because people can actually see what's happening. So these instances were 2 days apart, right? And as a Black woman who has three children, high risk pregnancies, both because I was 39 with one and I was 41 with the twins, right? I had excellent medical care. I have no complaints, right? But my story is more unique than it should be. Right. And so there was one instance, and I believe it was in the great state of Texas, great state with sarcasm at this incident, right? But where she, is sitting there, this African American woman, and she's literally about to give birth. On TikTok, you have several OBGYNs breaking down the sound she's making, breaking down, knowing that she's literally about to give birth. And there is a, nurse who is not giving eye contact, who keeps asking her these inane ass questions like, well, is this your first pregnancy? All this stuff that could have been done later, right? And she had this baby 30 minutes later, but she's in pain. It is a medical event and she's being ignored, discounted. Serena Williams talked about the same experience where she almost died post childbirth because pre, during, and post are the most vulnerable times, right? All right. So literally, just a few days later, within the same week, there's another African American woman, right? The first woman, her mom was recording the whole thing, right? And the
Mhm.
internet blew up, like, what the hell? Then it happened again in Indiana. A Chicago woman and her husband, went to, the ER, and she again is, within minutes of giving childbirth, and they turn her away. Her husband has to deliver the baby in the car with no sanitizer, no nothing. He has to deliver the baby because she was turned away. You go to the medical professionals and she is turned away. And it is the same story being discounted, and it's deadly. It is killing Black women, which maybe that's the point, right? And when you are having a health event yourself, you are not your own best advocate. Like, you're not in a good place to advocate. And we're seeing it in real time. Pregnant women who are seeking medical attention, who are being discounted, ignored, deflected, spoken down to. It's insane. It is insane. I feel it deeply. It is deeply disturbing. You mean to tell me we can't do better? We talk about pro-life all the time, right? And these women are bringing in life, and they're like, "Well, maybe not that life." I mean, come on. And so both of these women gave birth within an hour, less than an hour, minutes, I think it's 30 minutes or, of going to seek medical attention and being turned away from appropriate medical care. I don't understand it. It's 2025. These women didn't have babies at home. They sought medical attention. So
One, I appreciate your passion as not just as a Black woman, as a mother. It's almost makes you speechless. But I think those videos that you mentioned bring awareness to the fact that this is still something that, for some ungodly reason, is something we're still struggling with. And you and I know what it is. It's straight up racism. It's a system that thinks women can, take more pain, that their issues are not important, they're invisible. I mean, all the things that you mentioned. And I guess it's scary for me because I have a daughter. She's of the age where she might decide to have kids. I guess one of the things you reminded me of is how important it is in these situations to have some support around you. Because in both situations, you mentioned there was a mother who was filming the whole thing. The other one, the father was there to help out. Without that support, I can only imagine it being worse with women who are out there kind of feeling alone,
yeah,
without any kind of supports.
yeah.
And so it really speaks to how important we have to be looking out for one another. And I actually have a couple of people who are friends who are, what's the right term? Not au pairs. It's the person who kind of is with you through the whole birthing process.
Doula, a doula.
Yeah, a doula.
Mhm. Yeah,
And it speaks to me how important a doula is because my great grandmother was a midwife. And
yeah.
it just speaks about the importance of having someone there before, during, and after the process so
Can I
folks
point out
can
they
advocate
had
for you.
somebody there and it didn't make a difference. It didn't make a difference. Maybe because the person that was there was also African American, I don't know, but it didn't make a difference. And then both of these women had medical complications afterwards. right? Because they didn't one is like, well, you had medical complications because you had the baby sitting up in the car. Well, hell, she tried not to. I mean, it just the other woman, the baby's first excrement is called like mecum, I think it is. Pardon me,
Yeah,
my
something like
mispronunciation. Well, he had that inside of her, which can cause septic shock. They were seeking medical attention, and neither one of them got it. What the hell is going on? I mean, we know what's going on, right? And so, as somebody who, again, black mom, whole thing, and I had probably the Cadillac version, privileged enough to have the Cadillac version of medical care. I was monitored closely the whole time. I had great doctors, good communication. Why is my story rare? Why is my story
that.
rare? And these women's story more common than mine. That ain't right.
No, it's not. And I guess the reason I mentioned doula is because I feel like having someone who has a more personal connection to the family, to the mothers particularly, I don't know if it will solve the problem that we're talking about, but I think this whole medical model that's very kind of sterile and distant and uncaring about Black women particularly is part of the problem. And it makes me wonder if having like we have a group here in Austin called Mama Sana, and it's basically women of color who are doulas who support Black women and others women of color as going through the birthing process. I just wonder about because I feel like the medical system is set up to be very distant and cold sometimes,
And
if not a
yeah,
lot.
and it's racism is the problem. Like, let's name the problem. The problem is racism, right? Because you could have a whole army of folks with you,
True,
right?
true, true.
So, I think doulas are fantastic, but if people are not listening to the doulas, they didn't listen to the husband, they didn't listen to the mother, they didn't listen to the women themselves, right? And when we stop listening to the people we're treating, we miss things. And if you look on TikTok, not like that's the source of news, right? But if you look on TikTok, you have people from all different racial, ethnic backgrounds horrified about the
Yes.
treatment that these women got. Well, we need to turn that into something, right? And later on, we're gonna talk about how the federal government has declassified nursing and other professions as being professional. But if you go and you hear some of the stories of some of the nurses who are and some of the doctors who are horrified at the treatment these women received, that's where the change happens, right? And we stop caring about other people's pain, right? Especially in service professions, you don't do your job effectively. We might as well just have a chat bot. A chat bot would have treated them better, quite frankly.
You would hope so, but unfortunately, those are made
Yeah,
by
AI
people
would have been
too.
like, "I'm sorry that you are feeling like you are in pain."
Right, and it's just, I mean, and I go. You made an early comment that I think is important is that you have a whole political movement that focuses on being pro against abortion, and what they're really against is not really fulfilling the whole life of a child, but really just they're anti really birthing. I mean, they're supporting birthing of children, but they're not really supporting the full life of a child, and and more needs to be done. I mean, it's just but the like you said, racism.
Yeah,
We have
like
a president who espouses racist ideas, which we'll talk about later on. But if you have that kind of built into the DNA of the system, these are the kinds of outcomes that we're going to have, and it's outrageous and
I can
it's scary.
only imagine, though, being in excruciating pain because childbirth ain't for wimps. Being in excruciating pain, trying to seek help and being scared for yourself, scared for your child, and not being listened to, being turned away. And both these women had children before, so they knew, like, "Hey, like, I'm
Yeah,
about to give birth and being turned away. Ooh, KP, about to catch
I
a
can't
case?
imagine.
No,
Wow, I can't imagine. I'm thinking as a dad.
process." Yeah,
I'm just thinking as a dad, I'll be flipping out. They just gonna have to take me to jail. The
yeah.
thing is, I don't want to go to jail because who's gonna be there to help out? So it's like imagine that kind of situation and not flip out and turn over some chairs and tables. Yeah. Uh, I
So
don't
I'm
know.
I'm not done being elevated about it. But, and I think remember women have died, black women have died, right, giving childbirth in one of the most advanced countries in the world when it comes to medical care. There's no excuse for it. Fix the racism problem.
Well, it makes me wonder about just what can we do as a community when we have mothers, whether it be that during their prenatal kind of things. But how do we do they need to have like a whole team going with them to the hospital or wherever they're going to ensure that they get the services that they were supposed to receive? Because it seems like I don't
It's
know
an
what the other
infrastructure
solution is.
problem, and it has to be changed at the level of the infrastructure. But I will say recording it, right,
Mm.
has been I hope it leads to lasting change, right? Like, we've been talking about is DEI out of the window. Well, this is a real good instance where, right, we need some education, right? And I have participated in providing said education to certain hospitals on healthcare disparities and how it can harm patients, and then to see this. So I could go on about this all day. We should probably move on, but I'm still hot. I'm still hot. I'm still
No, I
hot.
mean, we should be hot because the thing is unfortunately, these are just 2 instances that have been recorded, and you and I both know there's probably hundreds of these situations happening
Correct.
on a regular basis, and so I think the outrage is necessary, but hopefully there's some awareness. I mean, I'm just thinking about that nurse who was sitting there back there. I'm like, I would hope you would learn from the situation not to behave the way you, behaved this that was recorded in the
Well, this
thing,
one,
so
her first instance, apparently, allegedly, but I'm just
well, let's go to, the sexual health around STIs, STDs.
yeah, so I think one of the things that's interesting, and when we go back to being children, what your the people you grew up with, what they taught you about your body and your sexual health. And if you grew up in a family or a culture where it was never discussed, you often don't know when things are wrong. And women overall tend to have more issues with understanding their bodies than men. And I think that that is kind
Mhm.
of as a result of patriarchy and the fact that boys have to touch themselves to pee and girls do not, right? And so I think that when we teach our children, oh, it's your pee pee, right? And not your penis. Oh, it's your pee pee, right? Then we are sort of, we don't say, when we say this is your ear, we don't come up with, oh, that's your earrie. Like we don't come up with cutesy names for any other body parts,
It's your
right? And
sound
then
hole.
right, right. Your sound hole, right? You silly. Right. But we're giving children a message, especially girls, about their own body. And then as girls grow up, they begin to learn in school that if you want to insult a boy, you want to, you insult him by calling him a name that is representative of female genitalia or something feminizing, right?
Pussy, right.
Yeah, right. I've come the more intellectual route, but yes, 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 right. And I think what happens is, like, women are objectified and begin to associate their bodies and their body parts with negative things. So when something is wrong because you haven't looked at yourself, examined yourself, right? Like, you don't know what your vagina is supposed to smell like what happens is we don't know when something is wrong. Right? And so what can happen is or we have shame about it, or we don't know how to communicate about it, we don't wanna go to the doctor, and one of the things that happens is this can be very harmful. It can be harmful in childbirth if you have any kind of STI. It can be harmful in sexual relations. We don't have dialogues about it, and so I would love to lead the revolution of sexual health education where people are comfortable talking about such things because I think it's really costing us.
Well, we'll say more about that because, I think I've told this story about I remember my first anatomy physiology class. We went over the portion around reproductive health. And
Mhm.
we started talking about, all the different parts as you would in a course like this. And when we started talking about, particularly the women's parts, when the professor asked about did people know the difference between where they urinated from and other parts of their anatomy, and there was just a lot of confusion for a bunch of 18, mostly 18-year-old women. And I remember being in the class, being able to answer questions, but I specifically know I could answer the questions because I had very clear conversations with my mother growing up. Then we had the biology class where they talk about this in high school in I think senior year, and then all the conversations in between. And so what I had difficulty understanding was what was it about my experience that was so unique that I knew about women's bodies that this whole room of women, even if they did know, they didn't feel comfortable talking about it. And I know for a fact several of them did not. And I think that's a reflection of the community as a whole with a lot of misinformation, lack of information, or feeling embarrassed about talking about this important subject that we're talking
Yeah,
about now.
yeah. Well, if you're gonna teach your son that it's his pee-pee, when he goes to the doctor, what's he gonna say? "Doc, I got a problem with my pee-pee." I mean, come on now, right? I used to work with, my former department chair, and he told me he took his father to the urologist, and the nurse was like, "So, don't let your this touch your little buddies," right? And I was like and I can't remember what she called the
Please.
penis, but, you know, and I was like, this is a urologist's office. We can't say penis and testicles. What's wrong with you?" Right? And so these whole kind of cutesy names for genitalia, right, communicates a message about body parts, and it ends up costing us because we can't go to the doctor and say, "Hey, doc, right, I'm having an odor, right? Something is wrong," which can be indicative of any number of sexually transmitted infections. Why are we ashamed about bodies, about biological functions? We don't have like now my parents were teachers, so they were like, we weren't educated, so we're gonna educate y'all. So, they brought out books and had conversations. And I told you what I would do to my parents during the swim team park walk. Hey, watch this. Let me ask this question, right? And my mom would answer questions in an educated way. But I think that our experiences are not the norm. And when I started teaching human sexuality all those years ago at the college level, I wasn't surprised that my students didn't know very basic things. And I had to use a question box where I had to have everybody put in a piece of paper and scribble on it so that nobody knew when people were asking questions that I would answer 'em. And it's a shame. And it's 2025. Why are we doing this in 2025, y'all?
But you said it right there. It's the shame, it's the guilt, it's religious, cultural norms that say that we shouldn't be having these conversations. We have a hard time even saying the actual biological name of these different parts that we're talking about. I understand that, if you don't want to say other words, that's great, but we even have challenges saying penis and vagina and vulva. And that's also understanding, that's assuming you know where those things are. So there's a
Mama
lot
in
of
there,
shame
some
around
people
it.
don't even know what that is.
That's true. And this is the challenge, right? Because when you're talking about smells and odors, when you're talking about maybe something itching or having pain in an
Yeah.
area there's a lot of shame in, now you've doubled. You have almost feel like you have to double down, right?
Well, people just like, "Well, I'll just ignore it and it'll go away." No, it won't. No, it won't. It's not
Well,
gonna stay.
maybe that's a challenge for some people. They have a contract something, and it may the symptoms may go away. Like if you have
Yeah,
herpes, right?
yeah,
So you have the irritation, you might have some pain, but give it a little time, a week or two, it's gone. At least on the surface. Now you and I
right.
know that that doesn't actually go away.
As
It's
it
going to be with you
replicates
until
throughout. Yeah,
yeah, that's going to be with you until the kingdom come. But
yeah,
other things will stay with you, and then next thing you know, a week, a month has gone by, and you got no treatment for it. You're not aware. Maybe there's antibiotics maybe for it or for some other
you're
kind of treatment.
spreading it and you're not able to talk about it and have conversations, right? We're not able to, like, and I used to work, as a very young woman in a psych hospital with adolescents. A lot of them did not know how to keep themselves clean, right? And so these are conversations, right, that we should be having from very early, which normalizes them, right? Like there's nothing shameful about bodies. There's nothing shameful about bodies. Like we should be having conversations about it so that we can enable people to communicate about their sexual.
Well, I mean, and the thing is funny you say this because it reminds me of this clip from Kevin. I forget the guy. He wasn't very popular, but he was the one about he was the one who would comment with women about their bodies and stuff. He would say really horrendous, harmful things. But he has this one video out where he's basically telling men to go clean your ass. Because again, this because there's for some reason because of the homophobia that's out there. Any conversation around the anus even if it's just cleaning yourself, forget anything that might be sexual, but anything that's associated with it is seen as shameful and we don't talk about it, or you must be gay for bringing up that. And he's like, look,
That is crazy. Take
getting,
some soap, y'all.
yes.
What's wrong with you?
And his
Like,
video is
like,
real
what's wrong
basic.
with come on now. I can't.
But the thing is again, the shame and
And
the
ignorance.
fear, the ignorance and fear around homosexuality and homophobia. Somehow, if you talk about washing your behind, somehow that's you bringing up
Okay,
something
that
that's
is
a taboo.
insane to me that somehow washing your behind is associated in any way with being gay. Insane. That is insane to me.
It is
Here's
insane.
some soap. It has nothing to do with sexual orientation or even sexual behavior. Wash your ass. That's it. Wash your ass. But you know what? My sons, I have two 11-year-old twin boys, and I'm like, come here, come here, come here. Because only our mom will do this. I'm like, come here. Did you use deodorant? And don't put deodorant on over funk. Like, bathe yourself. I'm like, come here, come here. I'm like, do you smell yourself? Nope. Go upstairs and wash yourself. And I'm use a washcloth. And when you come back downstairs, I'm gonna give you the smell test, right? Like, but they're 11. 11-year-old boys are behind in the hygiene realm. Let me smell your teeth. Did you brush your teeth? Let me look at your teeth, right? So, like, we should be having these they're happening in my house, right? We should be having
You
these
know, we should be, but I feel like they're not happening, and if they are happening, they're happening in a way that doesn't facilitate the very thing that we're talking about, where there's less shame, there's less guilt, less misinformation. Because I think all of those feed into this, and the reason I think it's connected to this conversation on STIs and STDs because, again, if I have a problem down there in my anus or my genitalia, I'm not gonna talk about it, and I might bring it up to my doctor, assuming I've gone to the doctor on a regular
or I
basis. I
won't
just
bring it
wait
up
for it to
to
go
my
away.
doctor at all. Yeah, I'll just hope it goes away.
Right, right. I put some, as we used to say back in elementary school, well, you can prevent that if you just put 7 Up on it.
Well, yeah, that's like the Robitussin argument. Here, let me put some Robitussin. I cannot.
Because,
That
it's bubbling, bubbling.
okay, then, you
I
know
mean, I think it's important for us to have this conversation because one, it's about having more honest conversations that are more transparent. The good thing now is we have information online. People can learn things, even if there's some shame and guilt. Hopefully, they talk to people who actually know what they're talking about when it comes to these conversations. And really, I think that hopefully one of the things that we're talking about is that if you do feel some shame and guilt around this or some misinformation, you're not by yourself.
Listen, I will tell you in my early days as a therapist, when I was working in community mental health, I would keep a human sexuality textbook on my shelf. And when people would ask, I would pull out the book and I would say, here, let's look at this together, right? Because, this would be something, people would be having sex, never have gone to the gynecologist. You don't know what's normal. So I would literally keep the book on my shelf and like, let's have a conversation about it. And these are the conversations that we should be having. If you could go to the doctor, right, for a sore eye or a sore throat, you could go to the doctor for other things that are sore as well and have informed conversations about it, know the questions to ask. So, yeah, we'll
I mean,
continue
and again,
talking
a lot
about
of
it.
yeah, and thank God not all of us have a doctor we feel comfortable with, or some of us don't have doctors, but there's so much information online these days. I think if you just take the risk of
Yeah.
dealing with some of the shame and guilt, you might find that you might be not in the situation you're in, or there's a solution to the problem that you might be experiencing. So, and there's almost always a solution. So, well, cool. Let's go on to the conversation around the nonsense of our federal government, where they're basically saying certain professions are professional versus not professional. And you and I are directly impacted by this because the ones that they're calling not professional jobs are nursing, a physician's assistant, a physical therapist, audiologist, architect, accountant, counseling and therapy, speech pathologist, educators, social workers, some engineers, and some business degrees.
So overall, like if you remove like engineering and accounting, right? Overall, and maybe architecture, what do these professions have in common? Could be female dominated. Okay, so yes. And a lot of these professions have a mandate that you are a mandated reporter. So if somebody is abusing children or an elderly person in your care, can we say Epstein files? Can we say right? So I don't know, right? But I do know that if you look at Project 2025, right? This has a lot to do with what is in that document. And when we talk about, and I teach in a master's counseling program, right, where we're putting counselors into the world to do good work with a wide number of people. And now, if your profession is declassified, it's not considered professional anymore, which is insane because these professions, there's licensure, there's education, there's continuing education. I don't know, that's professionalization of a profession. What it means is students are not gonna be able to get the amount of loans that they need to
Yes.
be able to go to school. We already have a nursing shortage. It's gonna cut these professions and the universities that serve them at the need, but that's the point.
Yeah. And
It's
and I
very
think when I looked it up, you could borrow up to $200,000 for these professions, but if it's a non-profession, you can only get up to 50,000 and it only ends up being
20
about
a year.
20,000 a year,
Yeah,
right?
yep, about 25. Yep.
And I don't know about you, but whether it's a public school or a private school, getting a degree is not cheap. And not having those kinds of resources available, I mean, folks are going in major, major debt for some of these degrees and not have, I mean, so now you're supposed to come out of pocket?
I don't
It
know,
just
or use
makes no sense.
private loans, which are not I mean, it is so disheartening, it is so disheartening.
Well,
I
maybe that's
just
the push.
I
Maybe that's the
mean,
push, you just mentioned it. Maybe instead of the federal government, whether it be Freddie Mac or Fannie Mae, not those are for home loans, but well, you know what I'm saying. But you have a lot of loans that come through the federal government at a very pretty, relatively low interest rate. And if you push them to more private funding
yeah,
because they're forced to, then now the amount of money that you're going to owe when you finish these degrees is going to be
yes,
higher at a higher
yeah,
interest rate.
yeah,
So
and
you're now privatizing.
it disproportionately penalizes women, and it disproportionately penalizes people of color. But again,
Right. Right.
if it looks like
So
a
now we're
duck,
gonna owe more money. Now we're gonna owe more money for the professions
if
that
you
we
do it
go
at
into.
all in the first place, right? And so, right, these professions serve the greater community as a whole, and those needs are not gonna get met, but, maybe we don't care about these things. I don't know. It's
Well,
very, very
but the other thing that's been a challenge, a lot of people who go into these professions will go into higher education, nonprofit organizations with the understanding that they can get some type of, I forget the name of the plan, but you can get money towards your actual loan forgiveness, right? But they're having a hard time even getting that fulfilled now.
Yep,
Right? You're supposed
yep,
to, pay it for whatever minimum amount for 10 years, but if you do that and work for a nonprofit, then they'll forgive your entire loan. Again, they're making that difficult. So on top of that, you have this where they're not, okay, now you're not a profession. Now you have to take out more higher interest private loans. They're basically making it more and more impossible for
exactly.
folks to do.
So the number of physical therapists so what's gonna happen is our health is gonna go down significantly. Our mental health is gonna go down significantly because there'll be far less professionals in the pipeline to serve these needs. It is just it's very upsetting.
Well, and we're going to do what we see in nursing, right? Where they're
Yes.
recruiting folks from outside of the country, which isn't bad in itself.
Well, you can't
But
recruit people from outside the country because they can't get in and they're here, they can't stay.
right, and it's all about what? Saving money, because then they can charge those folks for oftentimes from other countries at a lower rate, and yeah, it's insane. Well, anything else you want? Because I want to move on to Pharrell because I
No,
need
we'll keep our eye on that.
yeah, we'll
Keep
keep
we'll
my eye
keep our eye
on that. So let's talk about Pharrell because Pharrell he in the doghouse, y'all. Pharrell out here saying all kinds of stuff. Now, let's be clear. Pharrell had a movie come out, I think it was last year. It was a Lego movie, which went kind of through his entire career. And if you watch the movie like I did, it was very informative. It was fun to see his man's career go where it was in the late 90s up until the present, all the hits he's had. This is a guy who is a genius musically in so many ways. It's ridiculous. And the number of artists that he's worked with, he even had a song I found out that was, I think it was called Frontin', that he actually made for Prince. And when I listened to it, I'm like, oh, yeah, that is like a Prince sounding song. And so the respect I have for him as far as a musician and what he's done for the profession, top notch. He's up there. I mean, he's worked with so many folks. However, when asked the question about success in general and being chosen, he said, I have a problem with DEI because when you're getting a job, quote unquote, he said, do you want the job because you're black or because you're the best? And I'm like, hold up. That's a false choice, as if you
it
can't
is.
be the best and black
It
or the
is,
best
right.
in a woman or best
Yeah.
in immigrant. They go hand in hand. And I get it. This is a challenge. I get it. He's like, look, I'm the best at what I do by far. But every time someone brings my name up, they got to bring up me being black. And I'm like, I get it. You feel like you're more than just a black man. You're a lot of different things. You're a dad, you're a husband,
I'm
blah blah
glad
blah.
you did it.
But but you can't escape that part of you. It's a part of who you are.
It's your privilege on high, right? You're a millionaire multiple times over. So it's easy for you to say, right? But
Yeah.
we all know that one of the things that affirmative action did, and affirmative action really benefited women more than it benefited any racial ethnic
White
minority
women.
group. Yeah. And so, but we leave that out. And without kind of equity measures in place, right? And so, and actually, this guy, again, I don't have his name, but he broke it down and he said, he broke down the Pharrell comment and he said, if you apply, let's say to the University of Chicago, which is highly selective,
Mm-hmm.
30,000 people apply, they have 2,000 slots, right? And let's say they're looking at 18,000 applicants, right? He said that
Mm-hmm.
all of those applicants are extremely well qualified. Now you look to other criteria, right? That Does it add to your student body? Do people's life experiences, other criteria, but all of them are qualified. We always make the
Yes.
assumption DI done poorly or affirmative action done poorly is always about who's not qualified, right? As opposed to looking at all the different characteristics that really, contribute to a diversity of thought, a diversity of idea, all kinds of things. And so this whole idea, right, being perpetuated by Pharrell, who is a black man, that do you want the because
Yes.
you're the best or because but sometimes you won't even get looked at if you are a person of color, if you are a woman, if you're a member of the LGBTQIA plus community, right?
Right.
Without some oversight, it is easy because, of systemic racism, our systems are not set up, right, to look beyond into other people's experiences. It's just not. And so those things get missed, and you can already see it. Affirmative action got dismantled, and we can see what has happened to college admissions everywhere.
Well, and I think my personal frustration is watching mediocre people, particularly mediocre white men, and I don't have any problem with white men. What I have a problem with is unqualified, below average, mediocre people in positions of authority and power looking at me saying you're not qualified because of this, or being racist, or being homophobic, or being sexist. And I'm like, wait a minute, you got in your position for no other reason because of the affirmative action that white men have been experiencing as long as our history as a country. And so it's frustrating why we talk about being excellent and being our best when in actuality we're making room for mediocre behavior and professional outcomes over and over. And it's just really frustrating to watch. And it's
It's also a
disappointing.
place for mediocrity. Everybody can't be excellent at everything, right?
No,
But
no,
I would
true.
love it if we could create a system where everybody deserves a chance.
Right. And yes, I mean, Chris Rock said this first. You know, when racism ends, when I can be just the most average or whatever, and that be attributed to my race, right? And there's value. I mean, not everyone needs to be the best, but I think oftentimes the challenge is that whatever our success may be, whether it be mediocre, below, or excellence, that it's diminished because of our race, because of a lot of different things, and it's horrific to have to watch all that kind of happen. So I'm disappointed in him. My
Oh,
hope
and did you convince yourself that your inherent specialness is the only thing that got you where you are? Right? Because
maybe
it's
that's
always like talent and luck and being in the right place at the right time. Like it's all of these things. And are you uplifting people or are you saying things like, well, do you want it because you're the best or because you're black? Sometimes you just want a chance at a job, whether you the
I mean,
best or
and you and I both know that, and I know this. I remember this from my training around career services. That I think it's 50% or more of people's decisions about career and where they go in their success is purely serendipity, being at the right place at the right time, circumstances. And a lot of people prefer to say luck. I don't think of it as luck. I think it's being right place at the right time, and even how we make choices about what we do. Oftentimes, it's like pure serendipity. And so this idea that somehow I'm just so freaking special,
yeah.
it's not
Well, and
always
it's
true.
easy to say that. Well, once you've made it, well, I'm special and nobody else is. Like I work hard like nobody else does. I
Right.
just
Right.
the assumptions being made are problematic to me.
Yeah. I mean, I think for real, I think about his opportunity he had for his very first hit was
He
because
went to
down the
Northwestern.
street. Yeah, Northwestern, but down the street from where he lived, there was a major musical icon of sorts during that period of time. Think about how many of us have no one even close to us who has that type of fame and fortune. And so it's just, I don't know, it was disappointing. My hope is that he's getting feedback.
Like his work, right? But before as a public figure, as a famous person, before you speak, think of the impact that your words have, right, on people who have less than you do.
Right. Well, and the maybe the hope and then the path moving forward is he's getting feedback from people who care about him, who know him, who he respects. Will say, Pharrell, bruh, I need to push back a little bit on that one because that don't make no sense. Not in real life for most of us. And so my hope is he's gotten some input because he seems like to be surrounded around some really good folks. But that's me wishful thinking on my part.
What he said was hurtful.
It was.
Yeah.
It was. Particularly because he has, up to this point, been very invested in the Black culture, Black community. He's been part of the culture. He's very received well in non-Black communities as well. And so it's kind of hard to hear him make that kind of commentary. You know what my fear is, and I don't think it's going to happen. But remember the first time when Kanye said something stupid?
Lord have mercy.
Remember when we were all like, Kanye's he's for the culture, he's one of us, and then we found out he wasn't. So my hope is that we're not going to go down that path. Maybe he'll look at Kanye like, I don't want to be like him. So I forgot to do a engagement card, but we're at the point where we're going to do our side eye. But before we get that, well, I guess
I think we gotta hurry up and do our side eye and do a
yes,
last
yes.
card, cause yeah.
Yes, there we go. There you go. So our side eye is two things. I'll talk about one and you talk about the other one if you don't mind. Trump earlier this week went on from the White House, from his desk, or somewhere in the White House at a table, going on and on about how much he thinks the Somali Americans are trash. Literally said it over and over. Spoke specifically about a representative who's actually also she's actually the first immigrant from Somali who's here. Of course, she's an American citizen, but she's the first one of her kind. And basically, he doesn't like her at all. And he's basically saying that we don't want these people here. That 80 something percent of them are on welfare. All this really negative, just straight up just racist commentary. And he just did it very openly. And it's all kinds of side eye as far
And
as I'm
it's
concerned.
just Tuesday, cause that's different than what?
But all the other stuff, the
Mhm.
well, and I was looking at some commentary on the news and other places. They said, you know, we already know he's racist, right? That's not the issue. Is why is he doing it now? You got the Epstein files, right? You got all this stuff around the people who've been killed in the Caribbean for supposedly drug smuggling, and the Secretary of Defense is getting a lot of heat right now, and so some people think he's doing this intentionally to distract from these
Yeah.
problematic
And
situations.
Marjorie quit. And Marjorie quit. And she quit, Marjorie quit. So I think there's a lot of things happening and sometimes distraction works, but we should keep our eye on the prize. Yeah. There's a lot going on.
Well, but Marjorie Taylor Greene is leaving
It's
her
leaving.
seat in January after her disappointment with Trump, who basically came after her. Then she started getting death threats from her people who supposedly were been behind her in the past. And now she's experiencing exactly the thing she was putting out. It's like a boomerang effect. She put out a lot of venom and finally it's come back at her. And now she's like, maybe I was wrong for doing that.
I
And
think
I,
she quit
those
for strategic purposes. She recognizes that if she wants to have a political career, she has to distance herself from him, and I think it's strategic. But who
I do
knows? I
too.
don't know what going on in that woman head. I don't know.
Do too, but I think there was her and there was 2 other women who were part of this MAGA movement who were very strongly seemingly affected by hearing some of the stories of some of the victims of Epstein, and I think as women, I wanna believe that there was a part of them was like, "Hey,
Now I'm giving you
that's
side
unacceptable."
I'm giving you side eye.
I
I
like to
think
believe, I don't know if it's true, I don't
I
know,
think if you're a politician, you have to see strategic opportunities, and that is my guess.
and
I don't
maybe
know if
both are
it's
true.
values based.
Maybe it's both true. Maybe I like to believe
Maybe.
that they would see something like that and be horrified by it, but unfortunately, we've seen them see other things and not be horrified. So, I mean, I
Uh-huh.
get it. It's well, that was our side eyes for today. Let's get to our last engagement card. Well, not engagement card, our celebration card. Let's see. Something that feels unfinished to me is blank. Only got one blank for you, Dr. Helm.
Whoa.
Something that feels
I have to think about that. You go first.
okay. Something's unfinished for me. Uh, I mean, yes, this the constant nonsense that we have to deal with as far as our federal government's concerned. It's a constant thing. I do feel like there's a bit of a pendulum swing. I mean, we had some elections earlier this year that seem to indicate that. I think we talked about MTG. I think that's evidence of a shift of some sort, even though
Mhm.
she might be going this other direction. I think we're going to have a president who is finishing his first year. He's going to be I forget the term, but basically he's not going to have much power. He's going to try to maintain it. So I feel like all of that feels very unfinished. And I'm wondering what this next year will bring for us. But my hope is that we'll tie some loose ends here, hopefully soon.
Something that feels unfinished is the fact that I think I'm gonna go philosophical, okay? That we are always in the process of becoming, like, we're always growing and developing, so I am not finished yet, and I think that human beings aren't, right? As a couples counselor, people are always like, "Well, you changed," right? Of course, and my whole thing is yes, right? And so we are always in the process of becoming, and so I think it's something to keep in mind, like, you're unfinished. There's still things to be done, there's still ways to grow, things to experience, people to connect with, and so that's what I think is undone for me.
After him on here being all philosophical, I feel like I need to be doing like this.
You are so silly.
I know. I heard myself say, I was like, wait a minute, am I that guy? Well, hey, Dr. Helm, it is always a pleasure. And I'm sorry it's been so long, but I'm glad you and I had some time to wait to do our other things. And I'm glad to be back. I hope you are too.
Good to see you.
All right. Well, thanks, everybody. See y'all next time. Bye.
Okay. Bye, y'all.